Tim, what would you say if I told you that you remember that whole like hullabaloo and little backfire about gun buybacks and the idea that they were only destroying the frames and receivers, but they're selling the parts, and the left, like you could literally, it was like a scene from the Raiders of the Lost Ark where their skin was melting off their face.
You're doing what?
Yeah. You're doing what? Yeah.
You mean you don't destroy these guns for free?
Exactly. There's a little bit of fallout, Tim. This is number one. Doctor, I hope you're doing well today. This is number one. All right. MSP, this is Michigan State Police. Michigan is, by the way, one of the biggest contributors to the gun buyback scheme under Whitmer. Halts contract with the gun disposal company after the expose reveals resale of parts. So now gun buybacks are bad now, Tim.
Well,
they're bad.
Just for those that didn't see our previous episode talking about this. So what the problem here is that the gun buyback company will either charge you to come to your event and chop up the guns and dispose of them, or they'll show up for free, no cost to you. But then after they destroy the receivers, they take the parts and sell the parts to get their income, because we live in a capitalist society. I know these Marxists that can't wrap their goofy little heads around it, but people don't work for free. Even the Marxists that want to take all your stuff and give it out to everybody else and redistribute it, they don't work for free either. So apparently this is causing a problem for them. Yeah, we're not going to pay them for their services. Dang it. We're just going to get rid of them.
No. Exactly. So now instead of paying for the service, like you said, we're just going to cancel gun buybacks, which the big irony in all that, of course, is I thought that was like the virtue signal of the left. It was like, we did this many gun buybacks. In New Mexico, we've got people who violate the law on the regular. I mean,
state and federal.
It's just,
I mean, these people.
It's just so comical, dude.
When you're a gun grabber and you're going to break laws, break them all, man. Go state and federal.
Listen, if you're going to do it right. But let me show you some of the stuff here, because I find this just comical. This is a great update. So this is number 2. The Michigan State Police placed its contract with Missouri-based gun demolition business Gunbusters on hold this month after the New York Times article, of which we covered. Tim, would you believe it? They actually only destroy the frames and then sell everything else in a dreaded kit. A kit, Tim. Yes.
It's not a firearm, folks. It's just bits and pieces. Sure, they can be reassembled, but you got to buy a receiver.
And that's evil. Which is the gun. Which has the background check, which is so weird because, again, guys, if you zoom out and you look at everything that the gun controllers tell us, and they beat us over the head with it. Universal background checks for every gun. If we only had background checks for every single gun, then we'd have no problems in the entire world. Well, in this scenario, all the gun buybacks, they're destroying the actual gun. To Tim's point, you'd have to buy another receiver, which is a gun, and then have a background check, and all of a sudden, that's bad because that stock and that grip and that barrel, it was associated with evil, Tim.
Well,
it looked at a gun.
This is kind of a roundabout way of proving yet again that their end goal here, folks, isn't safety.
Yes.
This is all about taking guns away. And so when they found out that the destroyed guns that were turned in, the parts were being resold to people that might remanufacture them into working firearms. But as Braden said, they have to go through a background check. The safety part that they want, they have to go through the background check that they imposed on us. They have to go through all the steps of gun control that they've placed on us to reassemble it. But man, that isn't good enough. No. Oh, we're going to yank our contract because how dare you build a gun? And that, my friends, is where they're coming from. They don't want you having guns. They want to take them all away. Right. This is just more proof of it.
It's so fascinating, man, because all the nuance and all the fight that we do in the entire sector, not just you and I, every time that we have a conversation about a move that they make, it always reveals their true purpose. There is never a point where it actually says, oh, they do just want common sense gun reform. No, it's always to the furthest extent, because there's always a problem with anything that they have outside of what they're talking about, like this, for example. And if you wanted to know, for the people who are not gun people, this is number 3, last part here. The disposal process complies with the ATF.
Right. So that they're torch cutting the receivers.
What's the problem?
Unlike the clowns in New Mexico who are band selling once through the receiver and then taking those firearms to a school and giving them to children, they're actually torch cutting them, destroying a 1/4 inch of material in 3 cuts through the receiver. So the ATF, rules are met. I don't agree with those stupid rules, but hey, that's what it is.
But they're there.
But they're there.
And they love
so
them.
They're doing everything that they're supposed to according to the law, but still the anti-gunners, we want nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Well, that was the first update we had for the people. I enjoyed that one. I really love showing people that kind of stuff. But now this next one, Tim, this one I put in for you. This one is
Can't
for
wait to
you
see this
because
one.
I like you as a human. Would you believe, Tim? Like how many days ago was it that Wayne LaPierre retired from the NRA? Like 5,
a couple days
4?
ago. Yeah, I don't think it's been a week yet.
Right?
Yeah.
Very recently. Very recently. Well, it turns out this is number 4. The NRA lawyer distances gun group from LaPierre's lavish spending. Wow, that didn't take long at all, did it?
No, because remember, folks, a lot of NRA members had no idea this stuff was going on. I actually, in one of my posts talking about LaPierre's resignation and Midway USA making some crazy post, which they ultimately deleted, praising his contribution to the 2A world and all this stuff. And
did they delete that?
They deleted it. Yeah. And I of course, I screenshot all those posts and I just reposted it. And I'm like, I think they mistakenly deleted this. But anyway, so here we have the NRA. Well, but I guess my point in all that, first of all, was that, I actually saw comments in that post saying, I don't really understand why is everybody so mad at LaPierre and the NRA? Honest question. Like, there are people still living under rocks that don't live in the 2A community. They're just kind of passing through. They own a few guns, but they're not really into the whole gun rights fight. And they don't know what the NRA has been doing for decades under his mismanagement.
Right.
$40,000 suits, private jets, fine wine, going all over Europe, making deals with dictators for money, and all this crazy stuff that he was responsible for. And they don't know about it, even though many of us have been screaming from their treetops, look what these people are doing with your due money. And they're not helping. And they just didn't get it. But now we have this lawyer saying, oh yeah, all that stuff basically is true. We want nothing to do with that.
Wasn't us. It was him. Yes.
Wasn't us. That was all him.
Like
the crazy
4
man,
days, dude.
Weekend at Bernie's looking dude.
4 days. Yeah. Exactly. Well, listen to what they said. I find this fascinating. Then we're going to break this down a little bit because this is still an update, but this is number 5. On Tuesday, a lawyer for the group, Sarah Rogers, tried in her opening statements to distance the organization from Mr. LaPierre, telling jurors that while he was a valuable leader, quote, he was not always a meticulous corporate executive. The NRA is not Wayne LaPierre.
He wasn't meticulous. Okay. He thought it was a $4,000 suit, folks, not 40. He didn't know.
I mean, he wasn't meticulous. The mistakes happen.
Yeah, I mean, he was a valuable leader. He just sucked.
Right. Them watching them try to do the balance, and this is where the marketing and the PR comes in. I love this part. This is where it's like, well, how do we not make the existing NRA members who are still there pissed, but also appeal to the people who are pissed? And it's like, while a valuable leader, he wasn't always the most meticulous. You know what, PR person in the marketing department?
Yeah. Slow clap for you. This is clearly them trying to throw themselves at the mercy of the court by saying, yeah, we don't want anything to do with him. But hey, he was a good leader, but he wasn't meticulous. Now he's just crooked and corrupt. They have words for that.
Exactly.
Meticulous isn't the word we're looking for, folks.
It's funny you say they have words, because if we go number 6, she didn't just stop there. Still, she was unsparing in her evaluation of Mr. LaPierre's tenure, arguing that while the NRA was under his control, there had been, quote, a betrayal of the group's mission. When problems surfaced, these problems were corrected.
No, they weren't.
Okay.
So this is epic. So she just said what we've been arguing for years, folks.
Yes.
That under his control, there has been a betrayal of the group's mission. And what is that mission besides training and stuff like that? The ILA's mission is to preserve your Second Amendment rights. And they have screwed that up for decades. They have wheeled and dealed with your rights, brokering power and money for themselves and trying to keep the gun control thing going for as long as they can. The NRA has no desire to get a definitive court decision that says, hands off, Second Amendment. It protects an individual right to own a gun. No more into discussion. No more lawsuits. It's over. The Second Amendment exists. Repeal it if you don't like it. Right? But they don't want that. They need it to keep going because this is how you keep paying for Wayne's suits and his wine and private jets and all the stuff he was doing. So, oh my goodness, this is epic. They admit that he.
Exactly.
It's right there.
Wow,
Tim, I'm a lawyer.
You okay over there? You okay? You okay? You good? You look so gleeful.
It's vindication.
You're glowing.
Because you know how many arguments I've had over the years with people? and people that are in the Second Amendment community that I respect. I've had arguments with them, some big names that you would recognize about the, the usefulness and the validity and the NRA itself and even the corruption of the NRA, and listening to them say, well, is that really the case? Oh, you don't really know that, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, yes, we do know it. And now the lawyer for the NRA comes out and actually says it. So it's just vindication. Yeah. It's like, man.
Hey, Doctor, can I get what Kamala Harris would say to Donald Trump right there? I think that would be applicable.
Do not come. Do not come.
But what did Trump say? He just had a town hall. What did he say in that town hall?
I'm going to come.
Spicy episode.
Yeah,
folks.
No, I told you. We told you. Fair warning. But legitimately, while you were like throwing your hands up in victory over there, I was like, "Oh, doctor, please play Kamala. Please." I was like,
and whenever you say play Kamala, I want to hear Trump's response. Oh, although he wasn't really responding to her, folks. This is just two different sound clips, which just kind of funny together.
But man, do they go together well. But anyway, yeah, Tim. Turns out betrayal in court. Wow. So now that we've had your fun,
yes,
and you've had your moment of vindication, which I really enjoyed watching in real time. By the way, I thought that was special.
Yeah.
Here's the question I have for you: is this a moment where they are, because they are absolutely distancing from the problem as they perceive it, 100%, while still saying he's a valuable leader, but they betrayed the mission, right? Do you think this is the beginning of a U-turn and then a hard push back to reclaim their spot in the 2A community? Or do you think that this is quite literally just covering their own skin? The executive board's still the same cesspool that it was. What are your initial gut reactions just looking at their movement
there? The former. I mean, this is just jockeying in court. I don't think there's really been any decision up top, as to the new. I mean, they still have to pick new leadership. They have to figure out a path forward. Where they're going to go, I think it's anybody's guess. This is just a lawyer trying to protect their client, which is the NRA. And basically, they're going to blame Wayne for everything. So you think
it's just lawyer court speak?
What's that? Yeah.
So you think it's just lawyer court speak covering their butts in the court case, no change of action? That's what you think?
Not yet. Well, I think the NRA's only choice at this point is to make that hard turn and become the rights organization we need, or they're going to die. So they don't really have a choice. It's a binary choice for them. If they try to just kind of limp forward and sweep this under the rug and pretend like it didn't happen, that'd be the worst thing they could possibly do.
I would agree. I think that would be the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. I'm going to be following this one pretty tight because I love watching organizations move and twist and turn to challenges that they incorporate and that they encounter. In my personal opinion, the NRA would have to come back, do a U-turn, put the right person in, and then do a hard concerted push to where they actually were relevant again. That's honestly, I think that's the only way you do it, because you said something in your moment where you were really, really excited. That was so powerful and so realistic. If you keep the fight going and you never solve the problem, then you keep your relevance important. It's the political move, right? So don't ever solve the problem because you need me. If I solve the problem, I solve the problem out of my own job, right? I think that is such an interesting piece because what we've been seeing over the past 20, 30 years, I think is exactly that. You've had the NRA being the only kid on the block representing gun rights. You've had the gun lobby, which is the Democrat politicians, representing the opposite. And nothing ever moved, right? It was always a little bit this way, a little bit that way, just enough to keep themselves relevant. So they were still getting paid. They were still having their incomes. Everything was still there. The status quo is effectively what I'm saying. It was very 80s, 90s, early 2000s politician, right? But you had segments of the gun controlling groups splinter off. You got 4 main gun control groups. Then you had gun rights groups splinter off from the NRA, and you got 4 or 5 main gun rights groups. And now we're all going at it on the sidelines in like a little street fight because the big boys have been basically relegated to the closet because they weren't doing anything. Basically, I think that inadvertently, the NRA doing this kind of crap opened up the door for us to truly fight, which is why I think you have a breakout of all these different rulings, all these different victories, and these different court cases. I think that all contributes to it. What say you?
No, I would agree. I think certainly having more than one group fighting for us, first of all, being a good capitalist, I like competition, right? So if one group isn't doing it right, pick a different group. One product doesn't work for you. If your Chevy doesn't run right, go pick up a Ford, vice versa, right? So that's
just don't suck start it.
Just don't suck start them. That's a good way to die. So what you want to do here is have that competition between groups. So I'm perfectly fine with having, NRA come roaring back and still supporting GOA, still supporting FPC and SAF, because they're all good groups and they all bring different cases. It's nice having GOA focusing on this case and having FPC focusing on this case, because people have it in their minds that these organizations have just unlimited resources and funds, and they don't. They actually have just a handful of millions of dollars, which may seem like a lot of money to us, because $1 million would certainly make my life a lot easier. But $1 million in the grand scheme of things, when you're fighting court cases and dealing in DC, is nothing. And literally, that's what they're dealing with is a few million here and a few million, that's all, folks. A few million there, right? So they're not as big. So if we can have more of them fighting different cases, that's beneficial to us. So I will always like having more than less in terms of people out there fighting for us.
No, absolutely. And then you also have the added effect of the smaller, more nimble organizations moving faster than the Titanics of the NRAs and these huge organizations who are, there's lots of different elements to that. And I agree. The more people doing it in their own ways is a great thing to strengthen.
Oh yeah. For the last 15 years, the NRA has been playing, leading from behind, right? You have the smaller groups bringing the cases, and NRA has been trying to slide in on their cases and file an amicus brief here and then slip their name in there and say, oh yeah, we're going to support you now. This goes all the way back to Heller.
They did try to do that.
They opposed it.
Yeah, they did.
They spent your money, NRA members, opposing Heller, trying to keep it from going to the Supreme Court. Then when the Supreme Court agreed to pick it up, all of a sudden NRA is all on board. And then they claimed victory afterwards.
Oh. See, I think that had less to do with money and more to do with political win versus loss. I don't know.
It absolutely did. But they were, the NRA has historically been scared of a fight. They wanted to maintain the status quo. They didn't want to heavily rock the boat, and they didn't want to risk too much. But you don't win if you don't risk anything. And so the
and the irony,
bad leadership.
The irony of the ARs. No, I agree. It's leadership for their own purposes, not for the mission. Again, betrayal. I think it's interesting. All these things coming together. I love this stuff because the ARs, like for example, they left once ARs more than they want to breathe, right? So if they want ARs so bad, had the fight begun earlier in the issuance of ARs, if it had been fought around the 1994 era when the AR ban came out, or AWB rather, it would have been a harder fight than now, because now you've got 25 million of them on the street in common use, and they're by far the most popular firearm in the United States by far.
That's happened over
now.
the last 30 years.
I don't know. I just think it's so interesting because the fight is going to go. It's not going to go how the left thinks it's going to go. I don't. That's all I'm saying.
I hope.
That's all I'm trying to say.